Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Born Free here. I'm an SCR, and I bumped into my friend here, Tom Cannon. How are you?
Hi, I'm good, thanks.
Good, excellent. So we're going to do something special. Tom was at the event in 1998, 20 years ago, when Daigo and Valle met, and I guess could quite possibly be the first international esports ever event, if you want to call it that.
Sure.
But 1998, Japanese champion Daigo comes over to play Valle here in America, in SoCal. Where was it exactly?
So it was in it was in NorCal. It was in Nickel City Arcade in San Jose, and there was the U.S. Championships, which was basically a tournament with a lot of Cali players, some players from New York and the Midwest, I'm pretty sure, and we all played. I played in that tournament to basically fight for the right to play Daigo, who was the international champion or the Japanese champion, and was basically just hanging out in the arcade watching the tournament. And so there were two stories. First was who was going to earn the right to represent the U.S., and this was sort of a continuation of the NorCal SoCal rivalry that had been, really fierce for like years and years. This was like the latest chapter of that rivalry. And then part two of the story was Alex Valle in representing the U.S. and then seeing how the U.S. stacked up against Japan for one of the first times, maybe the first time ever. I'm pretty sure this is the first time where, in a formal way, there was a Japanese player playing against an American player.
Which I think is super dope, and we actually have footage of it, right? So I wanted to go through the footage with you and have your kind of like commentary over the top, and so we could, what you can remember from 20 years ago.
Okay.
So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna press play. We're gonna press play now.
Pressing play now. Right. So this was the host that they brought over, which was a little. She was great, but it was like just kind of strange. Because we're at a tournament, and there's a host, and I guess this is the Japanese broadcast of the event. And this B-roll footage is hilarious because they're showing San Francisco, and Daigo is walking down the streets of San Francisco. The tournament took place like 50 miles south of San Francisco, like an hour drive away in traffic. But this is the arcade. So this is Nickel City, San Jose, California, right? Those are those old American sticks, the bat-style sticks, and the sort of concave buttons, not the Sanwa parts that we use now. Yeah, and there you go.
Street Fighter. Let me just pause it a second.
Sure.
So what was the arcade was called?
Nickel City. So that's a chain of arcades. I'm pretty sure I'm getting this right. If I'm getting it wrong, sorry, whatever arcade it was. But this took place in just kind of an arcade, right?
Okay.
There was no like esports arena. There was no like special venue that was constructed. It was an arcade, and in those days, a good portion of the arcade were like fighting games, and most of those fighting games were Street Fighter, right? So it was a venue ready-made to hold a tournament at the scale that the scene was at now, or at the time, which was like, maybe like, I think it's 64 or 128 players played in this thing. And you can see that like there were just rows and rows of Alpha 3 cabinets. And that's sort of the way it was back then, was you went to an arcade, and there wasn't just one or two machines. There were a lot. There were like 4, 5, 8, depending on the arcade. And so, yeah, it was really just making use of the facilities that were there. This Japanese TV crew and I guess Capcom representatives showed up with Daigo, and we ran our tournament, and then the winner played Daigo.
So
it all happened in one afternoon.
And we were talking earlier, you knew about Daigo before that, right? You knew a little bit about him?
Only by reputation. Only that it was really mysterious, because we knew there were like anecdotes of people who would go to Japan and just get wrecked, or people would go to Japan and would say, oh, they're good, but they're not that good. Right?
Okay.
And so it was a huge unknown, but like I said, the competition, especially in like New York and California, was really, really fierce. And so people were like grinding hard and competing every single weekend. And so we felt that we were actually pretty strong.
Okay.
And we wanted to know what the real story was. How do we stack up?
And how did you know about the tournament? Like, can you remember?
Oh, I can't even remember. It had to be like basically word of mouth. Like at that point, okay, the World Wide Web was kind of a thing in '98,
Oh, yeah,
barely,
it was kind of a
just
thing.
just barely
barely,
getting
yeah,
off the
yeah.
ground. But like I might have found out. I probably found out from Usenet, which is just a text-based message board.
Okay. And going. Sorry.
Okay,
Go.
yeah, there were almost certainly like ads in like I don't know, like Die Hard Game Fan magazine or whatever else, and that's probably how most people found out about it.
And going into that tournament, did you think Valle was definitely going to win the US side?
No, I'm sure that the people in SoCal thought that Alex or a SoCal player would win, and we were equally sure. I was from Sunnyvale at the time, which is in NorCal,
Yeah.
and we were sure that a NorCal player was going to win.
Which NorCal player were you thinking at the time?
There were a lot of good players. There's John Choi, there's Graham Wolf, who ultimately made it to the grand finals against Alex. Jason Cole, players that you wouldn't know their names anymore, but like Jason Nelson. A lot of really good players. Like the scenes, the city-based scenes, LA, New York, Sunnyvale, to a lesser extent, cities in the Midwest, like Chicago, they were all... It was almost like they had their own teams. There were like a good 5 or 8 players that were like a cut above, right?
Yeah.
And when you came at these sort of tournaments, which didn't happen very often, it wasn't like every week or month like it is now. It was like maybe you had 3 or 4, regional or national tournaments in the U.S., all organized by players. And those were the times where, maybe there's like 100 people in the bracket, but it was really sort of how are your top 5 from, in my case, like Sunnyvale, going to stack up against, the top 5 from New York or the top 5 from LA. And the results, not just who won, but like the top 8, 12, 16 results were really looked at with a lot of like pride and scrutiny. It's like, hey, maybe your guy won, but like our guys got like 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, right? And so, and like which region is better based on that? You can make an argument either way. It's like, well, our guy won, we're the best.
Right.
But yeah, but you just have that one guy. Like collectively, we're the best. And these arguments, like they were never ending. It was just a really, really fierce rivalry. I mean, I think the rivalries back then, no doubt, were fiercer than they were even now. Because now, like you look at what happened with Evo, where people just appreciate great play, and people have always appreciated great play, but I think either way that turned out, if Taquito could come through with the back-to-back, or Problem X, who ultimately did come through with the win, either way, there was a lot of I guess admiration for that winner. Right?
Yeah.
There was not a lot of admiration back then. It was like, okay, you won, but now you have a giant target on your back, and there was just a lot of salt, because it was every part of the country, and ultimately, later the world, when we started engaging with Japan, really trying to prove that we were the best and that we deserved the most respect, right? Because this was a time where Street Fighter games were coming out fairly regularly.
Yeah, they were really quick,
and it took a long time to learn the game, because you didn't have home versions, and you didn't have training modes, right? And so you were on this continual like path of discovery, and you see this when a new game comes out now, and it's like people grind super hard in the lab and they're playing online, and it's like there's just, I guess, an extra stakes on the line, like who can figure this game out the fastest, and who can prove that not only that they're good, but they understand like deeply how the game works, because they were able to figure it out, and they were able to like optimize their stuff faster than you were, right? And that was almost like a continual battle back in the day, where you had like, it started with ST, and there was a bit of a gap between ST and Alpha 2, because Alpha 1 was honestly pretty bad, but there was like Alpha 2, and then Alpha 3, and then CVS 1, which wasn't great, but then CVS 2, right? So you had this steady stream of games, and it was like a lot of excitement when the new game came out, like who can figure this out the fastest. It was a really, really competitive time. The players now play super hard, and it probably, look, honestly, the level of play has never been higher than it was than it's never been higher, because you have so many resources as a player. But the competitive spirit back then was just as high, and it was more accessible, I think, because you had regular access to top players like all the time because you would both go to the arcade.
Yeah.
So I was sort of maybe like, not in the top tier, but always at the edge of trying to get into the top tier players. And so but it was awesome to be able to have access to those players like all the time. That kind of access you don't have today.
Yeah. So they had the US tournament here, which is what we're gonna continue watching.
Sure.
But Alex came out on top basically.
Yeah, on the US side, sure. Yeah.
And Daigo was hanging around.
Right.
And as I understand it, Alex was playing a number of characters. He didn't want to show off his main character.
Yeah, so this was a tactic that a lot of players used, and Alex certainly did, which was you'd have a bevy of characters, and you would hide your main as long as you could.
Yeah.
Because remember, this is a time where you don't know everything about the game. You don't know. You haven't.
No one's watching you on CFN. They don't know. So part of your artillery is to actually have that secret weapon.
Yeah, that's right. And so Alex had his V-Ru, which he wanted to hide, and.
Well, we're gonna watch it now.
Sure.
I think it gets forced out by
Graham. Yeah,
by Graham.
And we'll see how this goes, right? So, yeah, okay. So that's Alex on the right-hand cabinet. Alex in the dark shirt, and Graham Wolf.
There's Daigo
right. Daigo is right behind Alex, right? So Alex he's playing two games at once. He has to make sure he wins this match. He's got to beat Graham, and ultimately he does. But he knows Daigo's behind him, and he knows Daigo's watching, right? And as a top player, he's been in that situation where maybe he's the winner, and maybe we should pause it. But Alex has been in this situation tons of times where he's ahead in the bracket, and so he's watching the people who are behind him in the bracket. So he's just gathering intel, right? And this happens even today, right? And so the two games Alex is playing is, how do I win this tournament without showing Daigo my real stuff? And Graham played Dalsum. It was, I think, 8 A's in Dalsum, I think. Graham's an excellent player and took Alex pretty close to the edge. And ultimately, towards the end, Alex had to pull out his V-Ru and used it to finish off Graham. And so I know that was something that Alex was trying to avoid. But he was unsuccessful in doing that. And that's, I think, we celebrate Alex and we remember that Alex was, the one who got to play Daigo, which was awesome. But I think it's also important to remember that the other players in the tournament were also really strong. And it was a really tense moment. And the whole first half of the story is who's going to come out on top, NorCal or SoCal. And Alex was able to triumph for SoCal. Which is why, even though ultimately he lost to Daigo, he fought really well. And but before that even happened, he had won a tournament with all the best players in the US. And so that in itself is a pretty huge achievement that kind of gets lost in the shuffle because we like to focus on Alex versus Daigo.
Sure. So this is the moment. So now we've got Alex in a tank top.
Right. Yeah, and this is the host, right? This is the host introducing, here's Alex, here's Daigo. And we're kind of looking around. So there's no big screen. Everyone is just huddled around this cabinet. And we're like, this is cool, but it's a little weird. Why is she introducing the players and why are we doing interviews? We were going to go along with it. We knew that they were ultimately going to produce a TV show. But it's just, I guess, the point is that this is sort of esports before there's any kind of esports really, before even PC esports are a big thing. And so the concept of hey, there's a host or there's someone to help facilitate this thing for later viewers was a new thing and pretty interesting. Oh, and this is kind of crazy too. So you can see that Alex and Daigo were both playing on different cabinets.
Yeah.
That's because the US had a different standard of sticks, right? We had those bat style sticks.
Yes.
And so Alex had his set of controls, and Daigo the American style, and Daigo had the Japanese style controls, right? So this is Alex playing a V-Ru versus Daigo's Vyakuma. And let's see, you can see this style that Alex is using Vism not for pure damage, but for resets and mix-ups, was something that was a bit of a surprise to us who had not seen this movie before. And I'm not sure if this is accurate, but I think it was a surprise even to Daigo. Like he hadn't seen that style of Vism, using it to set up new situations like in resets rather than just do like a lot of damage. And so it was a really interesting back and forth of sort of two different styles, where Daigo was very sort of optimized and precise, and Alex really wanted to turn the match into like sort of controlled chaos, where he was putting Daigo in situations where Daigo didn't know, maybe unconventional situations, or maybe even Alex hadn't been in that situation before. And Alex has always been a player who like plays by feel, and he feels like if he can like put the match in very unstable, strange positions, then he'll have the advantage because he just has a better instinctual sense of play.
Okay.
And so Alex wins the first game, and at this point, like, we're all feeling really good. Like, I was feeling great because Alex had Daigo off balance. He was first, like, there was no blow up. Nobody knew, like we thought, but we didn't know, like, maybe he's just gonna get destroyed, and that didn't happen. Like, he won the first game.
Did you know the term the Beast?
No, that's a great point. Daigo at this point was not the Beast.
Right.
Okay, he is about to become the Beast.
Yeah.
Okay, and it doesn't happen. Daigo became the Beast a little bit after this event. So after the tournament is done, we just wanted to see more Street Fighter, and so there were some exhibition tournaments where like the top 5 U.S. players all got to play Daigo, and Daigo played like a different character, like against all of them.
Rolento, Guy.
Right, and gosh, I might be screwing up the details here, but at some point during this event, like, Daigo did something like ridiculous. It might have been like a crazy Guy combo followed by setup followed by another combo, or it might have been during the tournament. But actually, Ben Kirton, who's still in the scene, Tragic, he's our MC, Evo's MC, right?
Yeah.
Daigo does this crazy shit, and Ben is like, he's unleashed the beast.
Oh,
right?
he said it?
Yes, Ben said that. Right?
Oh, wow.
And that is where Daigo the Beast came from, right?
Oh.
Yeah. So this is sort of the day where Daigo became the Beast, right?
I think I have the title for the video: "The Day Daigo Became the Beast."
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's a crazy story.
Yeah. So at this point in the match, Daigo's tied it up. And Daigo is starting to adapt to Alex's crazy style, right? And he's starting to turn it on. Like you saw, he did sort of a teleport in the corner and spin kick. He started doing things that he wasn't doing in the first game, and started showing Alex new looks, right? And at this point, we kind of have a sinking feeling because like it was like all Alex, right? Yeah. And then they were kind of neck and neck, and it's gradually becoming more and more Daigo.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And Daigo at this point is he's figured Alex out, and he's not beating Alex straight up, like in neutral in the way the exchanges are going. They're actually kind of neck and neck. They're playing at parity, but Daigo's game is so optimized, he's getting way more damage per hit.
That was the end, right? So
right,
Alex was confused.
Right. So there was some confusion about whether or not this was a race to 3 or a race to 2. And Daigo, Alex thought it was a race to 3, and a lot of us did. But when Daigo won 2-1, dude with megaphone.
Yeah, you can see them talking in the background.
Right.
Like, there.
Right. Yeah.
He looks pissed.
Well, it wasn't great, right? Because they were going back and forth, and Alex, I'm sure, felt that he was still in it, and they told him that it was for race to 3.
Yeah.
But this was kind of a super cheesy moment. They're like, the Westerner gets a Japanese style jacket, and Daigo gets a Western style jacket. And we're like, okay, whatever. And that's Jason Gonzalez, who ran the tournament and for a long time ran Midwest Championships out of the Chicago suburbs.
So that was a wild statue.
Yeah,
you had to get that home somehow.
Giant root trophy. I'm sure he just, I don't know how he got it.
Who knows what he did with it, right? Who knows what people like Daigo do with their million kind of like different
right,
like statues and stuff like that. So you were there, right? You saw you took part in the tournament, you watched the tournament, and then afterwards you guys did some some casuals. Was there anything else that happened like afterwards? Did you guys get photos together? Like, was it friendly? Like, did Daigo just disappear into the night?
He kind of just disappeared, to my knowledge, right? Because he had this. Well, first remember, he's like a 17-year-old kid.
Yeah.
He doesn't speak English, and he was surrounded by like a television crew and representatives from Capcom who were really there to produce this event, right? And they produced their event, and so he kind of like, I don't know, maybe it wasn't like, hey, let's all go out and have dinner later or something like it is now. He kind of disappeared.
He just disappeared.
Yeah.
Did he seem pretty relaxed like the whole time?
Yeah. Daigo has always been Daigo, which is, super relaxed, super chill, really generous, I think, with the way that he plays the game, which is he didn't have to play all those sets with U.S. top players afterwards because, he'd won the event, he'd done what he was supposed to do. But he just wanted to play, and he wanted to show what he could do. I think especially like to a new audience, and the people in the crowd we were seeing stuff that we hadn't really seen before, like Guile resets and extended Guile combo, or not Guile, Guy resets and Guy combos. So we wanted to see more. We wanted to see and we didn't expect to see that. We didn't expect to see 4 different characters played at a level that we hadn't seen before. And Daigo really, I think, appreciated being able to show what he could do for us. So that was awesome.
So just before everything shuts off, because it will in a minute, 2 questions. One is, how did you guys feel once he'd gone? Were you like, we got stuff to work on? Yeah,
it was like, okay, we've got to catch up, right? It was no one felt sort of defeated or anything like that. It was like,
challenge.
Cool. Yeah. Now we know what the next level looks like, right?
Okay.
Let's get back.
And when
to
was
work.
the next time you saw Daigo? Do you remember?
Oh man, I don't know. In 2000.
So it was a while.
2000 was 2 years later, which sounds like a long time, but it wasn't that long in those days because remember, events weren't nearly as frequent. In 2000, we put together a 5-person team, and this is documented in the Bang Machine documentary, which maybe one day will see the light of day.
I've seen it. But
Right. So that's where we put together a team and went to Japan to play against sort of
wild documentary.
A lot of Japanese players, and Daigo was one of them.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, this is going to shut off in a moment because of funny camera. So thank you so much for doing that. That's so awesome to have somebody who's actually there. And we will say goodbye to these guys.
Yep.
See you guys.
Bye.